I actually really want to hear your take on Amelia Perez. I know you said you haven't quite finished it, but you started it. Um, it
Yeah.
was a Golden Globe winner, and I have heard very interesting things about that particular show. So I'm really curious about what your take is on it.
Well, it's a movie, first of
Sorry, a
all,
movie. Sorry, yeah,
just so you know. Netflix released
Netflix.
it a couple of weeks ago, and honestly, it came up on my recommended, or I shouldn't say recommended, but what's new and up and coming, right?
Hmm.
A couple weeks ago, and I didn't really have any intention in watching this. However, it won Best Motion Picture within the comedy musical category for the Golden Globes last Sunday, and it beat out
Hmm.
Wicked. So I was like, something's up if it's beating out Wicked. So nonetheless, I decided on Monday or Tuesday to start it, and I got through at least halfway, and then I've been watching this evening the other parts. And again, like I have about only like 15 minutes left, but it's it's definitely not something I would have ever thought would be a movie slash musical because this takes place in Mexico City and it stars Zoe Saldana as Rita, who is an attorney in Mexico City at the beginning of the film and throughout the film. And then you have Selena Gomez, who plays the wife of this character Manitas, who is a dealer basically, like just a big like drug lord, and he ends up getting into contact and really kidnapping as Zoe Saldana's character Rita at the beginning of the film, and his request is to get her to make him disappear and for him to get a sex changed and go from man to woman. And Selena Gomez is the wife of this person, and she's someone who is not to know about this. And just the beginning part, you see this man with like a bunch of tattoos on his face. Like he is like a very scary guy. And he goes and gets this sex change. And then you see, it's supposed to be like, I think 3, 4, 5 years later, they're in London at a dinner. He's in London at a dinner as now Emilia Perez. That's Manita's new name. And he's at dinner, and the same table is Rita, and they end up talking in Spanish. And at that point, like everyone at the table, and it's a very nice event, is speaking English, and they connect. And at that point, Rita doesn't realize that's Manita's. She just sees a beautiful woman, and I mean, she knows who Rita is. So they start talking, and she's at that point says like, "Take me back to Mexico. I want to be with like my children and such." So at that point, they go back to Mexico City, I guess like number of years later, and Rita kind of orchestrates this whole move, etc. And you see their two kids come back into this mansion. She plays like almost like an aunt or like a family figure that like they never met before, but an older family figure who has money who's going to take care of both Selena Gomez, who is her name's Jessica, that's a character, Manita's wife, and then the two kids. And it's all kind of bizarre though, because this is all done in musical form and it's pretty heavy content and a very serious subject matter, which I don't know if it was the best in musical form. Personally, I thought it was just hard to digest and also kind of odd to see Zoe Saldana and Selena Gomez, who are both born here in America, sing and speak in Spanish. But nonetheless, it's definitely fascinating. It's not something I've ever seen before. I mean, a story about transition from male to female, and also a musical. Oh, by the way, and there's like drug cartels and, the mob and all of that, like, you know,
Yeah,
darker
is it a
content thrown in.
period piece?
No,
All right.
it's like modern day.
All right. I know there's a lot of controversy from people that
Yeah.
are very upset about both Selena Gomez and Zoe Saldana. but a lot about Selena because of the fact that not only is she not native, you know, Mexico, wherever, um, but she also doesn't actually speak Spanish. So she had
Correct.
to learn Spanish for this. Her Spanish is less than stellar, I guess. I wouldn't know because it's
Right.
not my native language, right? But there was a lot of heat about how her Spanish language was and her accent and things like that.
Right. Right. Right.
And she even said, she's like, look, I tried, but they really rushed me and I didn't have time to learn, everything as fast as I
Yeah.
would have liked. And it, I- yeah, I just know, like, was that something you could tell? Obviously, not being of Latin origin.
Yeah. It didn't sound like as fluid as the other, like, I mean, for example, the main character who is Emilia Perez, like you could tell this woman sounds like she's from Mexico, like that is her native language. Didn't sound like that. But then again, I'm also, not from there, so they could
Yeah.
probably pick it out much better than, myself or you, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, and even just like reading the comments too, a lot of people, both audience members and even the critics were like, this is kind of disgraceful. I guess there were some people that were of Mexican descent that were not happy with the
Yeah.
storyline
Oh, with the
either.
story too.
Yeah, I think just like with the cartel and just like the fact that like this we're supposed to believe that this big like head honcho, right, in charge of this cartel and I want to say it politely, but like I don't even know if drug trafficking is the right word, but just in charge of
Yeah, the
being
whole.
like a mobster, right? Is now all of a sudden I want to transition and I'm going to kidnap an attorney to help me get there. I don't know, it's kind of bizarre and then it's like let's throw it in as a musical.
Yeah, it's
It's weird. It's very weird. There is one song too in particular that I was just like this is kind of bizarre where Emilia Perez is in like this big house, so she comes back with Rita to America after like 4 or 5 years later, right? And then the kids come with Selena Gomez's character, aka her previous wife, Jessica, and or Jessie, and she's putting one of the kids to bed, and the kid starts smelling Emilia Perez, and he's like, "You smell like my papa," and like that's the song. You smell like my papa. You smell like cigars, and then just throwing in different stuff. I'm just like, this is so weird,
yeah.
so
I
weird. I don't know,
Yeah, it's definitely, like, without question, it's a strange
so strange.
topic for a musical. It's really like I don't know why this would have beat Wicked.
Wicked. That's what I'm saying. Like I'm going through the reviews. They're not, I mean, Wicked. The audience score for Emilia Perez, 45%, 76 from the critics. Okay, fine. The critics liked it. But I mean, if we go
Wicked's
to
90
Wicked,
something and 90 something, isn't it?
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
88 for the critics and I think like over 90 for the audience. It's just it doesn't make sense, Kevin.
Yeah,
95
I
from
would
the
say
audience.
maybe it's a reach for representation, but at the same time, like, Wicked
That's
is
what I'm thinking too.
Ariana Grande's um white Italian, American Italian, and I mean Cynthia Erivo's black, but I, I don't know. Like, it just seems like I haven't really heard a really good thing about this musical, so it's really bizarre that it beat Wicked to me. Was the main character, the Amelia Perez, was it actually a trans actor at least?
Yes, correct.
Okay, okay, like,
Which is great and she did
yeah,
a good job, but also Kevin, this could have been a drama. This just could have been a drama that they put on Netflix. Why did we have to add music to it?
yeah,
This would have been a fine drama. But like I feel like making into a musical is just almost making it like not as serious.
hmm
So I don't know. But I mean, I'm already at the point where it's almost at the end where like she still hasn't revealed to her wife Jessica that I'm your wife. And Jessica's moved on. She's seeing another man who apparently is a pimp. So it says like it keeps on saying like the translation pimp, 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 whatever. And she's like, you're not moving. And she's like, my children. She's like, what do you mean your children? These are my kids. Like, you're not fine. You want to marry him, but you're not moving these kids into this, basically criticizing this guy that she, granted, like he was like a head honcho at a drug cartel, but maybe just getting out of that lifestyle, she's realizing this is not something that I want for my family.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I mean at this point she's kidnapped now, Emilia Perez by, and it makes sense too because it's like Jessica has no clue what's going on. Why is all this money that was left for her husband given to this aunt, aka that is Manita's now as Emilia Perez, and I haven't seen a dime? Like, how is this legal? So I guess she takes matters into her own hands, has this new fiance, soon to be husband, pimp, try to take care of Emilia Perez by kidnapping her. Um, yeah, so just and then yeah, so we'll see. Clearly, it's about to happen where she's gonna have to reveal like I'm your husband in female form, but it's gonna come out eventually. But even that, it's like, how is that? Is that gonna be a song? Like, it's me, I'm your husband in a song form. It's
Yeah.
weird, Kevin. It's very weird. I don't think
So does it feel cheesy since it's, I mean, since it could have been a drama, but they made a musical out of it. And like I saw a clip of I guess it must be early on with Zoe Saldana, and they're talking about the whole sex change idea. Like they're in a lab or something like that. They're walking through and talking about or
hospital.
singing
It's really
about
a
it. Is
hospital.
it? Okay.
Yeah,
And I was like, this feels so weird. Like it just
it
felt
is
so weird.
weird. It's weird. I just don't. And this the guy who's, I guess, directed it is a French guy, and apparently they filmed a lot of it in France too.
All right.
I don't know, Kevin. I don't know. I don't know. I was like, let me give it a try. It won against Wicked. Why not watch it? Like something special about
Yeah.
it. I think like the first time I watched, I couldn't get through like, or because I'm already in my like third or fourth seating of this. Clearly, I'm loving it so much.
Yeah.
Um, the first time I think I got through 20 minutes, I was like, this is ridiculous. Like this is it's I don't want to say a joke, but it's just I'm not understanding what's
Yeah.
happening here. Like I'm understanding the storyline, but I don't find this entertaining. This is just with the music and stuff. It's just, and they're in the streets singing about it. And it's like, this is weird. This is so weird and not like it's honestly like I think these stories need to be told, right? And granted, I don't think this is not based on a true story, right? But
Right.
nonetheless, even if it was, this is not the method in delivering a story that is so important about, anything LGBTQ.
Right.
It's not like in this, I don't think it was the right way, personally. It could have been fine as like as a drama, drop the music, and even just reading the words, they it doesn't flow well. The songs don't like I don't want to say make sense, but it's not a song. They're just singing words. It's not a song. So any of them really, for that matter. And then they're dancing on table. It's crazy. It's like, are we gonna just make this very topical, edgy storyline? And it's like, let's make it a Chicago and have them dancing. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds weird. Like it really, I already wasn't like super on board with it.
It's
Um,
probably why I went to Netflix, Kevin, because they probably went to so many different companies. Like, do you want to put this in theaters? And they're probably like, nope,
yeah, no thanks. We're
no thanks.
good.
Fox, no, not you. Okay. Disney, what do you think? Disney? No, okay. And then just going around, and it's like, well, I guess it's Netflix, y'all. And that's
Yeah.
probably what happened. If I
Yeah,
were to, I don't know.
it doesn't, it definitely sounds like something that just would not have drawn an audience in a theater. Like there's so much about it that is not mainstream that it just I don't see how it could have.
Yeah,
I just it doesn't make sense to me. Um, so yeah, I don't think I'll watch it. I'm
yeah, I
almost
don't.
curious enough to just start it and see what, what shakes. But just the idea that it took you a handful of sittings to even get as far along as you are
No,
tells me that it's probably not great.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to read this one review to you, and this is from a critic. The combination of drama, song and dance, farce, social commentary, and tragedy in Emilia Perez makes for a truly bizarre. It's so anxious to startle us that it neglects simply to move us.
So shock value basically is what they're saying. Like it's just there to, I don't know, keep you on your toes, I guess. Like it's weird. It, it
And then other people are saying, even the ones that like it, it's a pretty implausible story, but three leads, do a good job. So it's more just saying, like, I guess the three leads do a good job. And then again, some people are criticizing Selena Gomez, but probably because she's been in such good roles, like Only Murders, is it? Oh, it's Only Murders in
yeah,
the Building,
yeah.
right? Yeah, and just other things that she's been in. And then it's like, all right, maybe she wanted to go back to her Latin roots and wanted to do something like this, but then it's like I think it just has to be done right, and I don't know if this was I don't know. I mean, she looks
Yeah.
beautiful. She looks so beautiful in the film, but that's all I can say about that.
Yeah, I love her. As a matter of fact, I was watching Only Murders Today. I love that show. I really like her in it. I think she's fantastic. So it's really
Right.
weird to me that this was a choice that she made and that it was a like the choice that the um that Netflix made and that this thing got done because it just sounds so bizarre. And I'm okay with bizarre musicals. Like I've seen some really weird ones, some that are really cool, but
Right.
yeah, it just doesn't sound like it should have been as popular as it was.
Yeah, I think it's again like it had to be shock value or just because it's topical. Like how else would it have won, you
Yeah,
know? But I don't know. It even seemed from some like reviewers, they're like, I'm from Mexico and this was disgraceful. Like people I think took offense to the film.
yeah, yeah,
I don't know.
yeah. I just, like I said, I'd have to watch it to know for sure, what it was that, um,
Yeah.
you know, made it like that had it compete with a show that is award winning, like across the board. And I know, and maybe that's the problem. Maybe it beats Wicked because Wicked has already won all the awards. So they were like, why would we give this awards when we can give something
Hmm.
new? I don't know. It's really, really
Yeah.
strange.
I'm looking here, and Kevin, it looks like there's a transgender critic who just said this is a dangerous representation for the transgender community. That speaks volumes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it almost sounds like it's somebody that like was on the run and that's why they did it instead of doing it for like, this is who I am kind of thing. Um, so yeah,
No,
that
I think it is this is who I am kind of thing, but because I'm at where I'm at professionally, do we want to call it professionally? I guess,
that's a
right?
career, I guess, right?
I guess it's a career. It's not something that can be done unless I get someone to help me disappear. And that's why
Mm.
Rita, Zoe Saldana's character, is brought in. But yeah, that's interesting. The ludicrousness of this film cannot be mistaken for originality. It is just, and I'm all about out there, right? Yorgos Lanthimos. I'm a fan
Yeah.
of most
Yeah.
of his films, but there's a difference between out there and then this is just it's a mishmash of honestly just doesn't make sense. It's another level and I don't know. And even like the people that loved it, like they said, this is probably not a plausible story, but nonetheless, here we are. Let's find it's like almost like someone did like a Mad Libs, but it's like let's pull out of a hat a transgender drug lord who runs away
Yeah.
from Mexico and let's put the wife played by Selena Gomez. And then they just literally were like, and let's make it even more. different and we'll make this a musical.
Yeah. Yeah, it just
It's so bizarre, Kevin.
sounds nuts. It sounds absolutely nuts.
It's nuts. And I'm all about like weird because I love weird, but this was like weird where it didn't make sense to me. So, yeah, watch maybe like 10, 20 minutes. Like one of the first songs, it's Zoe Saldana, who's an attorney, but she's walking. First of all, she's in nice clothes. She's walking in like it looks like not the best area of Mexico City, singing, and then eventually she gets kidnapped by Manitas, the drug lord, right? And you see him with like tattoos on his face. It's like this is the guy that wants to transition. It's just not believable, Kevin. It's
yeah.
not.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm just probably not putting, like I said, I might kick off a couple minutes of it just to see, like, get a feel for it. But I definitely, it's not like on my list of things to go watch. Um, so I'm curious, but not curious enough to just dive in. So
Yeah, but I
yeah.
mean, I will say like this actress, I want to get her name right, the one who plays Emilia Perez. I know her first name is Carla. I just hope she's able to have more opportunities to share her story as not only a trans actress, but also just what it means to the transgender community and maybe sharing that story in a different type of, whether it be a drama or just a different series of maybe even just a TV series or perhaps even a movie where it's not something like this out there. Because
Hmm.
it's something that definitely needs to be told, but in a way where I think it's more relatable and also plausible.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting. I do hope that everybody comes out of it with, at least advancing their careers. Like, I don't think anybody involved in it is are bad people. Like, I love Selena Gomez.
No,
I
of
love
course not.
I love Zoe Saldana. So they're obviously, I mean, their careers are fine, but I hope that the new up and comers out of it, can piggyback off this and do something really really great next. And I know I've kind of talked about it before because I read it somewhere and I think it's friggin' brilliant. Is actually what's her bucket that did the movie with Glenn Powell from Euphoria,
Sydney Sweeney.
Sydney Sweeney. She did Madam Web strictly for the purpose of getting in the door with Sony's representatives, right? Madam Web was a terrible movie,
Right,
but she made a smart decision that said, this will still advance my career, even if it's not good. So
right.
in this case, it's something that won awards, obviously.
Hmm.
So hopefully, this is a stepping stone for some of the newer people in there. So
Right. And it looks like she won. So the name of the actress who plays Emilia Perez is Carla Sofia Gascon. Gascon. She won award for Best Actress at the Cannes Film Festival.
okay,
So she's getting recognition.
that's good.
She was nominated for a Golden Globe, didn't win. But yeah, I mean, nonetheless, it's putting her name out there. I never heard of her before, but I think it's something that, again, topical, needs to be talked about, but in the right storyline.
Yeah.
So that's my take on it.
Do you know, have they announced Oscars yet? Is this an Oscar nominee?
I don't
I
know,
I
and
I
I
don't
don't
know
know
if they've
if,
announced them yet. Like, I'm not sure. Um,
imagine if it's not even nominated for an Oscar.
yeah, I'd be like, hmm.
This is so
Um,
weird. Yeah, but it also just came out. I wonder if whoever, I mean, I don't know who's actually behind the scenes in voting for the winners when it comes to the Golden Globes, but maybe it was like a panel of people that had just seen it most because it only came out like 3 weeks, 3 weeks ago. Maybe that was just what was most fresh in their head, and they're like, "This is topical. It's fresh in my head."
yeah, and it
But
came out
I
to
don't know.
us, but if it was a can, that was a while ago. So maybe it just didn't get distribution until now. I don't know.
No,
Um,
this was just released on Netflix in this December,
hmm,
this past December. So it's not even like I think a full month old yet.
hmm. And maybe it's just that it's fresh then, yeah. It's weird. That's
Super
weird.
weird.
All right. Well, s- talking about musicals that are weird, it's the perfect way to use Joker Folie Adieu to transition to something else. Funny transition. To move to something else. But I watched Joker Folie Adieu today because it's on
Mm,
HBO, and I've been curious, and it's really not very good.
hmm. I'm
Um,
shocked you said that, Kevin.
yes, so I agree with pretty much everybody. Although I will say, like, I see what they were trying to do. Like,
Okay.
I didn't. I saw the potential in the movie. The whole musical numbers and all that jazz was, um, his head world being weird, right? Like it wasn't supposed to be like a traditional musical where the songs really are like their interaction, right? Like if you watch
Right.
any classical musical, that's how the people are actually talking to each other and moving the story forward because they're just singing instead of saying what they're doing.
Right.
In Joker Folie à Joker 2. So I don't sound like an idiot that can't speak French. Joker 2, um, they are doing this to show that, in his head, these things are happening in a different way. Like he was a little crazy in the first one. He kind of saw the world through, whatever lens that he saw the world through. In this one, he um, sees it as a musical. And I think that really kicks off because he notices Harley Quinn for the first time and she's singing. And so everything that happens after that is musical related because he's infatuated with her.
Right.
Um, and I think, that made for a really interesting idea. But if you watch every single musical number, they don't fit because they're just so bizarre. And if they had made each one like a quarter of the length, like let them happen a little bit so you can see inside his mind and then
Hmm.
cut back, not only would the film have been a half an hour shorter, but I think it might have worked better. Like if you ignore the musical numbers, the story between him and Harley isn't that bad. She's crazy in her own way, but she's not as like outwardly crazy as he is. Like he has murdered people. She did whatever she's done is questionable. Like she said she burned her house down and killed her parents or whatever.
She's known for arson. That's it. I mean, that's you see that from when
Yeah.
they're watching a movie and that
And then she
that
like
one.
lights the hospital on fire.
Yeah.
But then they let her
She's more
go.
dangerous. She's more dangerous than him, Kevin. I
Arguably,
take it.
yeah, yeah. Because she's in love with this idea of this guy that's crazy. Because you even see later in the film
Yep.
when he admits that he's just broken. He's not this
Hmm.
crazy persona that she fell for. She just up and bails. She's like, okay, well, I need to fall in love with something crazier. And it's really
Hmm.
interesting. I actually would be curious to see somebody cut this movie and just flat out take out the music. If you just edited out the musical numbers, it'd be really short. It'd be too short to be a movie, and you would probably have to splice
Yep.
something else in there to really make it work. But I think the bones of the story are there. I think,
Yeah.
Todd Phillips even said like he was kind of trying to piss people off with this one. And he said a few things like that. And I think, I feel like that shows. I think, it just didn't really work. Now, um, do I think that Lady Gaga sounded amazing every single time she was singing? I absolutely do think she was great. Like she's a great singer. She does a great job with what she's given. I think she acts really well. Joaquin Phoenix obviously acts the part great. Like he's a great actor.
Hmm.
Um, if you take out the musical numbers, it almost becomes a courtroom drama. And it's a little more interesting in that regard because
Hmm.
he's damaged, right? Like he wants this. fame for a minute, and so he fires his attorney, comes back to court basically as Joker to to defend himself, which he is absolutely incapable of doing in any intelligent way. I mean, there's a lot of things about the story that are unbelievable. The fact that a judge would let him come into court with the makeup on, with the suit on, all that stuff is a reach for sure. Like that wouldn't happen.
Mm.
His first cross-examination of a witness is absolutely bonkers. There's no way they would let him go on as long as he did. But if you watch a lot of courtroom dramas and a lot of cases, they kind of throw that stuff out the window and kind of push the envelope with how far you can, um, you know, yeah, how many shenanigans you can pull in a courtroom is a lot more on TV than I think it is in real life. Um, but I do think it would have been an okay courtroom drama if it had been done differently. Um, and I think they could have done a little more in the asylum with him to show that he was crazy. Developed his relationship with her a little more because it did feel like most of what we saw there in their relationship develop was in his head in these songs that didn't happen. So um, it just felt rushed in that regard. I think if you did take out the musical numbers, you would see that it happened too fast. But like I said,
Yeah.
the bones for a good movie were there. They just didn't use them. Like my son walked in with about an hour left, and I mean he was laughing. He was just like, "What is even happening?" And I was like, dude, I know." I was like, "I know." It finished, and he was like, "That was not a good movie." And I was like, "I
And
agree."
it's such a shame because the first one is such
Yes.
gold. And I mean, not that I'm like, oh, this is going to tarnish Joaquin Phoenix's or Lady Gaga's reputation, but the first film was a masterpiece, and he did sing. He sang. I
Yeah.
remember a song, and he did the dance down the
Yep.
stairs in the Bronx, right?
Yep.
But based on the previews, this didn't seem like a musical. It was more just
No.
like it just
Yeah.
seemed like part two. Okay, cool. And yeah, this was just everything was just so wrong. Or how about like where you know how they have a lot of these scenes where they like take you away from reality
Hmm.
and they're both on stage singing together and then she ends up, I think, killing him or
She shoots
something.
him in the stomach. Yeah.
Yeah. Like stuff like that. It's like, all right.
Like that one, it made sense because he was starting to doubt her. So in his fantasy world, she was turning on him because his lawyer told him that she was just doing this for fame. Like she was
Correct.
using him to get famous. And so in his little head world, that's what started to happen. So they start singing
Mm-hmm.
their number and then she kind of starts singing about herself. And he's like, haha, we're supposed to be singing about each other and blah, blah. And then
Mm-hmm.
she shoots him. And I mean, it sort of works, but it's just weird. It's just, yeah, it could have been done so differently and so much better. I don't think it
Right.
needed to be
Or how
as
about the fact
musical as it
that
was.
she's not, and I mentioned this in like the episode where I reviewed it after seeing
Hmm.
it. How about the fact that like she's not it's not the traditional Harley Quinn that we know who is a psychiatrist at like she is an
She,
actual patient and
yeah,
she comes from money.
yeah,
She's got everything and she's just it's just unbelievable. That is another thing that's not very plausible. Girl from the
yeah,
Upper West Side falls in love. A girl with means ends up committing herself. You find out like towards the end, she committed
yep.
herself.
And checked herself out. When she told him she didn't,
Yes.
yeah. And I mean,
What?
so I mean, they do say she has a psychology degree or she was going to school for psychology.
Right. I
So,
remember that.
I mean, they're playing kind of fast and loose with the character there. Like, she sort of is like ish to the comics. But another thing too is that like with him, and I'm gonna spoil it because this whole movie is rotten and you shouldn't watch it anyways. Um, he basically he
Save your
dies at
time.
the end. He dies at the end, and the implication is that he's not the Joker that we know down the line, and maybe this dude that stabbed him in prison is the Joker. So it is entirely plausible long term that because she's crazy, she could check back in and fall for the next person that is the Joker, right?
Right.
So she could still be our Harley Quinn. She could still become the Harley Quinn that is, in love with the Joker or whatever, and it's just a different guy because she is that crazy. It, in a way, is almost more believable than the comics because, in the comics, the Joker is, she's not supposed to be as crazy as she is, and then she meets the Joker, and then she goes crazy and falls in love with him. But um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
They
It was
shouldn't have
not,
touched the first one. The first one was so perfect. This is why everybody, when you make something so good,
yeah, you don't need a sequel.
you don't need a sequel.
Yeah, it's
And we
100%
we're
true.
seeing this a time and time again now.
Yep.
We need more original ideas, but this is, yeah,
Yeah.
another
Fewer remakes, fewer sequels. Give me original stuff.
give me original stuff. Exactly. And this was like, I was excited too because I love Lady Gaga, but then it's like, really? I wonder if like they didn't cast Lady Gaga if they would have like gone the musical route. That's the other thing too. I'm
Right.
wondering. Like the
Right.
fact that
Yeah.
it was her and him, and they're just such both of them are fantastic behind, the camera. Ugh, yeah, it's such a disappointment. And this isn't like here's the other thing too. It's like, and granted, I've only seen her in A Star is Born. I haven't seen her in House of Gucci, but is it anytime she's now behind a camera and in a film she has to sing? Like, let's show her range.
Yeah. Yeah. I know that it's nice to be able to get her in there because she does have a great voice. So when you cast her in something,
100%.
but yeah, let her do something where she doesn't sing. Let her be an actor if that's what she wants to do. And
Yeah.
and see what she can do. So, but
So
yeah,
we'll see.
so
Well,
yeah, it
I'm
was.
glad you saw it, and I'm glad you agree with. Well, I mean, I wouldn't be mad if you didn't agree. Well, I'd be a little. Actually, I think we'd have to have an intervention, Kevin.
Yeah, you'd be disappointed.
I'd be like,
So
"What did you actually like about it?" Because I see nothing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So this was a courtroom drama to my mind, which leads me
Hmm.
to another movie that was also on HBO that I watched yesterday, and I meant to watch it a week ago. It's called Juror Number Two, and this is on, like I said, on HBO. I don't know if it was in theaters or not, but it is Clint Eastwood's directorial film of the year, and it stars friggin' everybody. I don't even know off of memory if I can list everybody in it, but it stars Nicholas Hoult. His wife is kind of a nobody, but then you've got J.K. Simmons in there. You've got, um, see, now I've got to look it up real quick because I'm forgetting literally everybody that was in it. Um, but absolute ton of people. And anyways, what's really interesting about this movie, oh, Tony Collette plays the prosecuting attorney. His attorney is played by Leslie Bibb is the juror. I forget who his attorney is, but so he's a former alcoholic. So the guy that runs his AA is Kiefer Sutherland. Like so many people are in this, and I think it's probably because people enjoy working with Clint Eastwood. Chris Messina plays his lawyer, who is great. Um, and then Cedric Yarborough, who I really like. He's usually does comedy. He was in Reno 911, but he's in this as a dramatic actor. Um, and so if you ever watch the um, the trailer, they tell you exactly what the movie is. Like the trailer, there's no real surprises in this movie, um, which is interesting because it's a great movie. It's really good. But like I said, there's no surprises. If you watch the trailer, it's about this character, Justin, played by Nicholas Hoult, who is a recovering alcoholic, and he gets called for jury duty. And so he goes to sit on this. He gets called into court. His wife is pregnant. but he gets called in anyways. And so he has to sit on the jury for this murder trial where this man is being tried for killing his girlfriend after a fight in a bar. And he happens to have pulled into that bar the same night while he was in recovery. Because we find out later the reason that he's in this bar, him and his wife have been trying to have a baby for a long time. They were really close. She was pregnant for a while. She lost that baby. So he, blaming himself, goes in, orders a drink, sits down, sets the drink in front of him, and never drinks it. Right. So he is, able to hold himself together there, leaves the bar in the pouring rain. It's like pouring rain. And so it's the visibility is low and all that. And, he's upset. He was crying in his car after he left because he's just so upset. He leaves. Um, at some point driving, he thinks he hits a deer. He gets out of the car. He doesn't see anything. Doesn't see a deer. Doesn't see anything. He's at he's at a bridge, and he continues driving. So he looks around. He really does look around. Looks everywhere. Figures he hit a deer and it ran off. So he goes home. Now this trial is a year later. He gets called in. This murder happened the night of that incident. So he was at the bar. He left the bar. He hit a deer, and now the question of the movie is, did he hit a deer or did he hit this woman that this man is now being blamed for? So now he's on a jury where a man is being tried for murder that he probably didn't commit. And so it at this point becomes a courtroom drama, and it's very 12 Angry Men-ish in that regard because he doesn't he doesn't want to admit that he probably did it. He's never quite sure, but he's 99% sure it was him, right? And so he doesn't want to send this man to prison, right? So he becomes the juror that is telling that he's innocent because he's not a bad guy, right? Like the guy on trial is actually not a great guy. He's got a bad past and all that. But Nicholas Holt's character isn't a bad guy. He didn't even know he did a bad thing. He wasn't drunk. He didn't do anything technically wrong. Um, and so, come to find out after this year later, maybe he did. And so that eats him up. And at that point, like I said, we just have a courtroom drama. So it's him with all the jurors where he's trying to convince them that this guy might actually be innocent because he doesn't want to send a guy to jail. And, Toni Collette's character is a district attorney, or she's a prosecuting attorney for the district attorney, and she's running for DA. Um, and, as the story goes on, um, I think what makes this movie really good is just really the actors and the way they play these characters and what they do. I don't think at any point does anything in this movie surprise you, like I said. So I'm not too worried about being a little spoilery, because it almost doesn't matter. It's just a really great character piece. So ultimately, the guy who's on trial, they do find him guilty. Like it comes down to, um, for what I can't remember the reason, but there's some reason that Nicholas Hoult. I think it's because Cedric Yarborough's character Marcus, um, he was like a Boys and Girls Club volunteer in the city, and this guy that committed the crime has a big tattoo on his neck from a gang, and he is adamant that no matter what, he's not going to find this guy innocent. He says it. He's like, he's guilty. I will not change. So we can either have a hung jury or we can find him guilty. And Nicholas Holt's character, for a minute, is like thinking maybe we can just have a hung jury and I'll be off the hook. But his AA, the guy that runs his AA, Kiefer Sutherland, is also a lawyer. And so he actually does the whole give him a dollar thing. So he's retaining him as a lawyer and tells him what happened. And, Kiefer Sutherland's character, again, not really a bad guy, tells him, he's like, you can't go forward with this. He's like, if you do, you'll be tried. even if it's manslaughter, whatever, if you're on this jury and you're involved in any way, you don't step forward, and then if you get found out, you're in you're in big trouble. You got a kid on the way, and then as things progress, he's talking to him again, and he's like, if the jury is hung, and there's because that one thing I left out too, J.K. Simmons' character is a former cop. So as he is getting involved in this, he initially thinks that the guy is guilty. When Nicholas Holt's character brings up doubt, he starts to doubt it, starts to do his own research, which he's not supposed to do, and they address that. Um, and he finds out information that starts to lead towards Nicholas Holt's character. And so when he's talking to Kiefer Sutherland, he says, he's like, if it's a hung jury, that gives them time to go back and look at this case again. And if they find something, then you're in trouble. He's like, it is in your best interest for this case to end. It cannot be a hung jury. It has to be an innocent or guilty verdict, and it has to be over. And so that's kind of the reason that he ends up turning and going back to, yeah, he's guilty. So they find the guy guilty, and he he's carrying this weight on himself that he did this thing. Like again, he's not a bad guy. He did this thing. So he shows up to the sentencing. So Toni Collette's there. They're sentencing this guy to life in prison for murder. She looks back and she sees him. And along the way, she has found the evidence that J.K. Simmons found. And she questioned everybody with a car that got repaired in that time window. And of course, his car was one of the cars. She sees him there, realizes who he is, and puts it all together. So the last like 15 minutes of the film is after the sentencing. He can't stay in the courtroom anymore. Like he's just so stressed out. So he goes outside and sits down. She comes down out and sits down with him, and they have a conversation about the hypotheticals where she's like, well, what if, what if he wasn't guilty? What if somebody else did it? And he's like, yeah, but what if that person didn't know? And they kind of go back and forth. And, she, at this point, right before the sentencing, she wins her run for district attorney. So she's now the DA, and he's like, well, if someone were to realize now that they were wrong and charge an innocent man, that would really hamper their district attorney run. Like, you would be laughed at, all your cases would get reviewed and blah, blah, blah. And he's not trying to be a dick. Like, he's really just trying to get out of this thing that he got himself into. Um, and, he's like, I'm not a bad guy. I've got a kid on the way, all this stuff. And so they leave. And it seems like we're going to have this happily ever after, like maybe he's going to get away with it or whatever. And the very last shot of the whole movie, he's sitting there with his wife and the baby that they had. So she made it this time. They had the baby. They're sitting there. There's a knock on the door. He opens the door. It's Toni Collette. Roll credits. So the implication there is that she's going to go ahead and charge him, or at least try and prove that he did it. Which, to be fair, I don't know it would be easy to do.
Right.
If he was, if he were to plead the fifth and never say anything, you would have to prove that his car that was repaired a year ago, there would be no evidence on the car. They'd have to prove that the woman was hit by a car, and then that it was his car, that it wasn't the other guy that they charged with murder that hit her with the car. Like, they leave all that to the imagination. Like, that's fine. That's never what it's about.
Interesting.
It's about the personal drama. It's about this guy's own battle with himself because his own guilt. And
Hmm.
it's a really good movie directed by a great director, with a bunch of great actors in it, and they do a really good job. Even the little side characters, the people that are, the jurors that aren't in there a lot, like Leslie Bibb, who usually does comedy because she
Hmm.
does kind of ridiculous really well. She's serious the entire time and does it great. Zoe Deutsch plays his wife, who I haven't really seen her
She's a Disney
much.
star.
Is
She's
she?
in
Okay.
on Disney stuff mostly, yeah.
Uh,
So one thing I will point out, one of my favorite films from childhood that I watched with my family was About a Boy, where Nicholas Hoult plays this like nerdy loner boy in middle school, and his mom is Toni Collette. And it's a film that takes place in London, England, and I just find it funny now, like seeing them 20 plus years later in a film again. Different
oh,
characters, not related, but I don't know, just their dynamic was very interesting in
yeah.
the film and very heartwarming too, because he really loved his mom. But yeah, this is something very different where she's gonna be after him.
Yeah.
Leads to, or at least they
Um,
lead you to believe.
it's funny that you bring up About a Boy because I saw a clip today. It was from 22 years ago. It was Kieran
Hmm.
Culkin winning an award that he beat out Nicholas Hoult in About a Boy and Tyler Hoechlin in whatever else Tyler Hoechlin was in. And so this clip where 22 years ago, Kieran Culkin looks about 3 years younger than he does now.
Yeah, because he's like hasn't changed. Yeah,
Nicholas Hoult looks like he's about 6 years old, and Tyler Hoechlin looks like 13. Like these guys look so young. Like it is a baby Tyler Hoechlin. And it's just funny to me because you have Kieran Culkin, who's now multiple award winner for Succession.
Succession,
That's the word I'm looking for.
and
Uh,
he
so
just won last week for A Real Pain for supporting actor.
that's right, right. So like he's killing
Yeah,
it, and then you've got he beat out Superman and Lex Luthor. Like it's wild, and to see these three guys who managed to have really solid careers after this is kind of funny. But what was really funny to me is just that like Kieran Culkin hasn't really aged that much. Like he doesn't look that different over 22 years. But these two were babies. Like Nicholas Hoult looked like a toddler. Like he looks
but
so young,
he also glowed up. Like they
but he
made
still
him
looks
look really,
exactly the same. Like Tyler
yeah,
Hoechlin almost looks like Native American too when he's younger. Like his skin looks darker and he's got kind
really.
of this funky. Yeah, it's a trip. It's a real trip. I might actually, if I can find it and figure out how to post it in here, I might put it in the
What film was he in where he was like nominated?
I don't know. You'd have to look at the same year as, and I don't know what the award was. It wasn't an Emmy or an Oscar. So I don't know. It might have been like a youth award or something. Um,
He was
but
known in he was I guess in Road to Perdition,
was it
Seventh
the same
Heaven,
year?
2003 to 2007. Wait, was it 2002 Road to Perdition?
So maybe he was nominated for that. Like maybe it was like best new actor or something, best young actor.
Was
Again,
this the
I don't know.
Golden Globes or you don't even know what
No,
award show it was? It
whatever
was
award
something.
it was like glass and kind of small and circular.
Okay.
Um,
And then he wasn't on, which, I know him for Teen Wolf
but
until like way later. No, that's like late teens, early 20s. No, he's probably like
no,
early
Teen
20s,
Wolf, didn't that start in like 2012 or something?
10. Yeah. Oh, was it 2012? 2011 to 2014. And
Yeah,
then they had a 2017. I guess they had nothing in 2017.
like yeah,
Well, okay, so he was in his 20s figure, right?
yeah,
Because he's like what, late 30s now? I don't know. He's
yeah,
like not much older than me. He's maybe like 4 or 5 years older than something like that. But that's interesting.
yeah.
That's very
It was just a
interesting.
trip. It was really funny, and it's funny that that Nicholas Holton is in this, and it just happened to see that clip. But yeah, anyways, Juror number two, really good. Definitely watch it. Like I said, if you watch the
Yeah.
trailer, there's really no surprises from the trailer that,
It
I,
sounds good though, from what
yeah,
you're saying. It sounds very good.
yeah, I definitely like, I had, yeah, I spoiled the ending of it for sure, but at the same time, like that ending's not a surprise. There's no moment in the movie where you don't feel like the things that are happening are going to lead it to this path. Like it's just not, it's not a shocking film in any way. It really is about
Hmm.
what these people go through. So definitely recommend it if you've got HBO or Max or whatever. It's right there for you to watch.
Hmm.
So give it a shot, and it's a solid watch. It's just 2 hours, like it's right at the 2 hour mark. So it actually goes pretty quick, and totally
Right
worth
on.
it. Yeah.
Okay. No, that's good to know. And this was in theaters at the end of this year, or did
I
this
don't
just?
know if it was in theaters. Like, I don't remember ever seeing a trailer for it as far as it being in theaters. So I'm not sure.
Mm,
I just know that I saw it pop up on HBO one day, and I was like, looks
okay.
good. I watched the trailer, and I was like, okay, yeah,
Right, right.
I want to watch that. And like I said, it's a
Hmm.
really good courtroom drama. Like that's really what it is. And really interesting that interesting idea that keeps it like the drama that's outside of the courtroom is really good, but then the courtroom bit is also really solid. And it's almost like a what would you do in this situation kind of thing too. Like when you really watch it and think about it,
Hmm.
he did do a bad like if he killed this woman with his car, which is still if as you watch it is arguably debatable. Like
Right.
you never it doesn't show him hit her. He's driving and you hear him hit something. He gets out of his car, there's nothing there. He looks over to the side of the bridge, can't see anything. He thinks he hits a deer and goes home. He can't tell his wife exactly what he did that night because she knows he's a recovering alcoholic. He went to a bar and bought
Right.
a drink. So even if he bought a drink and didn't drink, he did something he's not supposed to do. And they talk about that later in the film how she can see through his bullshit. So, if she thinks he's even close to being back on,
Hmm.
or off the wagon, his whole life could fall apart. So that night he lies and said he was somewhere else, hit a deer, which
Hmm.
in his mind was still what he did. He still thinks he hit a deer.
Right.
And um, and then, everything was fine. Like he never thought about it again because it wasn't anything. And then
Why would it even come up?
yeah.
Exactly.
And
That's
then
fascinating
he ends
though.
up on this jury that happens to be the case. And as he starts to put it together, he's like, oh shit, this might have been me. Um, and so yeah,
Hmm.
like it really is like, what would you do in this situation? Like
Right.
he's actively trying to do the best thing that he knows how. Like because if he leaves his wife and kid behind, they're gonna struggle. This girl is dead either way. This guy is not a great guy, but at the same time, like he's trying to prove that he's trying to fight for this man's innocence,
Right.
like, but without incriminating himself. It's really,
How certain is he though, Kevin, that it was him?
he's pretty certain. Like he's
Mm,
99.9% certain.
okay.
Like
Gotcha.
he's convinced it was him. Um,
Damn.
and at the same time, like if he were to go into court, um, and testify, it is all circumstantial because he never saw a body, he never saw anything, and you'd have to prove that it was him
Hmm.
without any real evidence because at that point, if the medical examiner's findings didn't say maybe she was hit by a car because their
Hmm.
their findings they said he beat her to the boyfriend beat her to death with a rock and threw her over the bridge. And so you'd have to prove that that wasn't true. And then you'd have to prove that his car was the one that hit her, but it's already been repaired. So all of that stuff is like all the evidence that would be on the car is gone. Like it would be a hard
Yeah.
fight to win. Um, so in that regard, it's kind of interesting that she does show up at his door at the end because I don't know that she could. I don't know that any prosecutor could prove that he did it.
Hmm.
So it would be a tough case. The only reason that you do it, and the problem is that you then throw reasonable doubt on the guy that you've put in jail. So if you also have to be convinced that it wasn't him.
Sure.
Um, because even if you go to try somebody else, you're saying that it probably wasn't that guy that's in jail.
Hmm.
So now he gets to go free. So it's a really just like in its own way, it's a little bit of a mind bender. Like you have to think about all the hoops and things that are involved with it. But it's really good. It's really, really good. I definitely recommend it.
Nice.
Especially if courtroom dramas and stuff are your thing. And like I said, I think Clint Eastwood, he's got to be like 150 now. Like he's ancient, but he's made
Hmm.
a handful of good movies in his later years. El Camino was amazing. Like he's good at what he does. So
Yeah.
definitely worth a watch.
Clint Eastwood's 94 years old. I
Yeah,
mean,
Yeah, he's not young.
No, and this is the first film that I'm seeing, like based on when I'm just scrolling here, that he's director, at least that he's done since The Mule, which I really enjoyed in 2018 when that
Mm-hmm.
came out, and he was
Yep.
not only the director but also the protagonist in that film, which I thought was
Yep.
that was fascinating because that's about a drug mule who's in his like I guess he's supposed to play someone in his 70s or 80s and how he like easily goes under the radar just due to his age and no one suspects him. It's funny.
So he also did Richard Jewell in 2019. He did
Oh,
Cry
that's
Macho.
right. Wait, he
He,
he directed that, Richard
yeah,
Jewell?
yeah,
Wow. And that was a pretty popular movie.
yeah,
Richard Jewell.
yeah. He's he's done a lot of great stuff. I said El Camino is Gran
Mm-hmm.
Torino. El Camino was with Brad Pitt. Was hilarious, but totally different movie.
Mm,
Um, yeah, he's great. So yeah, so that go watch the movie. It's really good.
for sure.
So sticking with these dramatic films, you watched Nickel Boys. Is that in the theaters right now?
It is in theaters right now. It came out a couple of weeks ago, and it was nominated for Best Motion Picture, but in the drama category, not the musical comedy category. Did not win, but nonetheless, it was up there. And I saw previews for it, I don't know, like a while back. I was doing some research. I'm like, this might be a good film. And then after seeing that it was nominated, and even from like Rotten Tomatoes, it got 89%, it looks like, from the the critics, 67 from the audience. It's based on a book which came out, I don't know how long ago, but the guy that wrote it, and I'm gonna look it up because I don't want to mess this up here. Um, he's written a lot of different books about just somewhat like fictional stories, but stories that are like loosely based on something true during like civil rights, Jim Crow eras, etc. And I just want to pull who the writer is. The writer. Okay, Nickel Boys.
Colson Whitehead
Yes, that's
wrote the
him.
novel. Yeah.
Colson, yes, Colson Whitehead. And he's written some other things too, like one about like I think it was called the Underground Railroad. So he's
Mhm.
definitely someone who's niche to this part of history. And essentially Nickel Boys is about you're focusing on one character, but the way it's filmed is fascinating. It's from like a third person. So you're seeing out the main character's eyes.
Hmm.
You're as you as the audience are him. You'll hear him speak, but you don't actually see him till like the end of the film. And his name is Elwood. And he's figure like middle school, high school. No, let's go high school age, give or take. And Elwood is in his home. You don't really know about his parents, but he lives with his nana, his grandmother, and she encourages him to go to this, we'll just say better high school than where he's supposed to go to. And he's someone who is studious and does that, I guess, does want to take that direction. And you see him walk to school, and then this man who also black man is driving a car, and he says, "Hey, where are you going? I'll take you there. Like, no need to walk because this school that is more reputable is further away, so he would actually have to walk to school." So he gets in the car with this gentleman who he doesn't know, and then they get pulled over, and he keeps telling him like, look down, don't say anything, just listen to what the cop says. And then you come to find out that this car was stolen by the black man who picked him up. So it's like, oh shoot, like, this kid is just trying to like do everything to go to a good school, live a good life, make himself a good future, especially in this era when, I mean, they're free. They're free, they're in the South, etc. So unfortunately, he gets picked up by the cop and he gets sent to the Nickel Academy, which is supposed to be like a reform school.
Hmm.
And you see in the beginning, like when they're driving them there are white teenagers too. And I guess it's for people that, have either committed a crime or just are not, so they claim, right, fit for regular society. So they're putting them in this reform school. They separate blacks from whites. And you see Elwood, go to this somewhat school, which they're not really like teaching them full out, but it's almost like they're providing labor, like they're working on the land there. Um, so that part's interesting. I'll be honest with you, it was very slow for me, and I think I need to rewatch it because it was so slow. But I do think how they filmed it was fascinating because you don't even know what Elwood looks like or
Mhm.
anything for a majority of the film because you're just seeing out his eyes. You see him in the car, you see him look down, you see him pretty much in the passenger seat as the other guy is getting pulled over by the cop. And then you see him arrive to the Nickel Academy and he's with other black gentlemen his age. So I think conceptually, I almost wish it wasn't third person. I mean, I think it was a cool idea. However, I don't know if I got really what I wanted out of it because it was so slow of a film. But you get to see how he like befriends a guy after like he gets hurt and goes to like their version of the infirmary, and he makes friends with another gentleman who goes by the name of Turner. And then you get to see how like his nana comes to the Nickel Academy trying to find Elwood, but she isn't able to find him. And kind of what their day to day looks like and how they're trying to escape essentially from this place. Because I mean, they're not given any rights. How are they here and then they're not able to leave? They're just taken here without, any type of protocol in terms of what needs to be done or how do they get out of here. And really, he didn't do anything wrong. He was just in the passenger seat of this unfortunate stolen car. So he didn't even get to really speak for himself. So it's basically a story about a black man who was at the wrong place at the wrong time and unfortunately punished for things that were out of his control.
Now, it sounds interesting for sure. I know it's funny because there's not a lot of movies that are shot this way, where it's shown from one person's point of view.
Hmm.
There's an action movie that was done like that, and I forget what it's called. Um, but the entire act, it's kind of a fun concept. I don't know that it was a good movie necessarily, but it is like he jumps out of an airplane, he's fighting, falling from the sky, like all this crazy stuff, and it's all done from
Hmm.
first person, which I think actually for an action movie is fun. Like it puts you in the driver's seat, so to speak, of these movies, or of these characters. Um, it'd be interesting to see it from a dramatic point of view. Yeah, you can hear um, the character speak, but it is almost, I don't know, it might almost be jarring that to not um, see the main character the whole time in something like this because and maybe the point is to kind of put you in the shoes of somebody that was in that situation.
Especially someone that was innocent who,
Yeah.
yeah, but anyway, him and Turner are trying to, you know, grapple with, the day to day there. And Turner's giving it because he's clearly been there longer, giving him tips to how to survive the Nickel Academy. And you don't really see much, but you hear a lot of like sounds of like them getting, yeah,
What's this rated?
hit
Do you
and
know?
stuff. I'd assume R, but let me check. Oh no, PG-13. Yeah, because
Okay.
they don't show like anyone getting
Like beat up and
whipped.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you don't see, you hear things. It's definitely, yeah.
All right.
But there is a big twist at the end, which I won't give away. And then like older version of Elwood is played by Daveed Diggs, who
Oh,
is known
okay.
for his performance in
Hamilton.
Hamilton.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So there are a few recognizable faces. there. I think I need to watch it again. It just, again, it was very slow. And I feel also this might be something where I would probably want to read the book first
Mm,
before seeing it because just how it's shown on screen, again, it was very slow and it felt longer than it actually was. It's like 2 hours and 20 minutes, but there's so many scenes where it's just like you hear music and they're showing things and it's supposed to be like what's going on, I guess, from the perspective of Elwood.
mhm.
But even like certain pieces, I was a little confused. I had to go after the film and YouTube some of it because honestly, I feel like I missed a lot. Just perhaps the book was just, I'd imagine, much more clear and cut in terms of the actual happenings of how he got there. And I mean, I understood he was taken there because he was found in the car with the gentleman who stole the car. But in terms of just the aftermath and everything like that, it was definitely very slow moving. And I almost wish like it wasn't so slow moving because there's so much of an antidote here in terms of how they could have built the story. And I'm wondering again, I didn't read the book. I think the book might share a lot more to this, but this is you're viewing this out of a black man's eyes figure during, I don't know, 50s, 60s. I'm trying to think of when it took place. Nickel Boys film. When does it take place?
The description here doesn't say.
60s in Florida, 1960s in Florida, it's saying. Oh yeah, 50s and 60s, that's what I figured.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's 2 hours and 20 minutes long, so I could see how that could, if they're not, if it's a dramatic piece that's not an action movie, then yeah, I can see where there would be a lot of slow parts in it for sure. Um, but yeah, it sounds good. Like I don't know what the Rotten Tomatoes score is, but on IMDb it's pretty high. It's 7.7. It's actually higher than Juror number two, which is only a 7. So probably promising
Yeah.
in that regard. It
It's higher from the actual critics at 89% and then a six like in the 60s for
hmm.
the audience. And I think again, I might need to read it first just to there's definitely a lot of like literary elements and symbolism in the film where I'm like, I over my head, completely over my head. This was probably something that was just much more geared towards those that read the actual piece here. I mean, I'm going off of like the reviews. I mean, I guess looking at both reviews from the critics, etc. Yeah, I mean, yes, innovative, like they're saying it's innovative, bold, brave. Yes, because it's serious content. Bizarrely shot from the character's point of view, sometimes behind their heads. Yeah, and that's the other thing too. It's sometimes like you'll see they don't reveal what's his name,
If he digs.
DVD Diggs until like the end. They don't reveal the front of his face, so you just see a guy with dreads. Like when they'll like flip a little bit from the series of events to let's say early 2000s when David Diggs, aka adult Elwood, right? They'll go back and forth in terms of just with what happened because he at that point it's revealed about this Nickel Academy and he's trying to like decide like should I say something like I was like a victim of this school and the abuse that they put me through.
Yeah, well, it's interesting too. If you look at the IMDb page, it doesn't actually on the main page doesn't even show Daveed Diggs. It's like they're kind of trying to keep that under
Yeah.
wraps a little.
Well, it is
Um,
sort of a surprise. I'm not going to give it away, but yeah, there is a little bit of a surprise at the end. That's also why I want to read it too, because I'm wondering how did they reveal the surprise in the book?
hmm.
So, which you don't know about, but yeah, mm, yeah.
Yeah, I think it says
So,
the book is a Pulitzer Prize winner. I think, or yeah, yeah. So the book, yeah, won the Pulitzer Prize. So it should be a great book. Definitely, probably worth a read. Um, and it sounds like a fascinating movie, even if it is a little boring. Sounds like really interesting for sure.
Yeah, like this person actually said, I'm reading this. The cinematography on this movie drove me to distract. It definitely was a bit distracting because they're putting so much symbolism in, and they're just like sometimes they would have a scene that seemed very serious, and then they would like throw in things where it's like they had a donkey thrown in or just something random thrown in. I'm like, I'm not understanding what's going on, and I definitely was distracted, I think, with this point of view. I don't know why, but it just was not the easiest to follow. So for me, the first thing I did when I came back, I was like, I need to YouTube this and I need some questions answered. But yeah, I mean, the whole point is it talks about racism. It talks about really just what happened specifically in the South during, Jim Crow. And yeah, I mean, they're saying it here in the reviews too. Wrong place, wrong time. That's literally what I thought. I was like, shoot.
Yeah.
Like, just when you think like they, when African Americans were able to start anew, especially this particular individual who is clearly educated and is trying to make a better life for himself, and his grandmother is like helping him to get to this, place where he's going to a better high school, and he just accepts a ride from the wrong guy. And
Yeah.
that's how he ends up there in the first place. And it's just like, damn. Hmm.
Yeah.
And of course, they didn't even like ask his point of view of like, why were you in the car in the first place? It's just automatically, you were
Yeah.
complicit. That's the assumption.
Yeah. And in the 50s and 60s, that's exactly what they would do.
Totally
They wouldn't give an opportunity. They would just assume.
correct.
And yeah. Where do you know where it takes place? Is it South?
Florida. It's
Florida. Oh,
Florida.
Florida. That's right. Okay.
It's all Florida.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean it is south. I figured it was south, and yeah,
Yeah.
it's confirmed. But they even said like when I Googled, I guess there was a reform school from what I was reading, not called the Nickel Academy, but something else that was in Florida, very similar in terms of its function for 1950s, 1960s. So yeah, I think again, I think I would have enjoyed it more if it was not filmed in the way that it was. And I think that if it was more obvious and not as, it wasn't as clear. I feel like there were parts that were definitely not clear in the film, and uh, it didn't keep my interest the whole way, but it's an important topic. And I feel like there were
Mhm.
definitely elements, and even just the fact that it's about like I said, a guy that was at the wrong place at the wrong time, who had his life really on track in terms of being able to, I mean, this is a guy, a gentleman figure 15, 16, 17, and he's with his grandmother and they're trying to get him to where he needs to be. And then it's really like an accident what happens, right? And this unfortunate incident happens, and then he gets put on the wrong path, and his grandmother can't even get him out.
Yeah.
She comes to visit to try to find him, and of course they're not going to be like, oh, she's here to visit. It's not like jail. She just has to leave the property.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not jail, but it is. Like, like, yeah.
I
So
mean, prisoners have certain rights.
true.
This is not the case here. It's worse in many respects because they're like it's a reform school, and like you see them sit in like a classrooms type of setup, but they're also doing a lot of labor work too, and there's no transparency of like when they're going to leave or anything like that. It's just you're stuck there, too bad.
Yeah.
And that's it. So, but yeah, definitely interesting. I didn't even know something like this existed. A reform school during the 50s and 60s. But I mean, unfortunately, I mean, I'm not surprised
Yeah.
just with what happened in history where unfortunately like racism continues and it still continues to this day.
In the reform
Um,
school, is it all black kids or are there white kids there
no,
too?
so there are
Okay.
white kids there too, but so like when you first see Elwood get like I guess he goes in a police car, there are white boys in the police car too, but it's like they get separated into like I guess different parts of the reform school. But then you don't really like see them as much. So it just focuses more on the black kids.
Mm.
right? But in the actual car itself, they have like two gentlemen. I forgot why they got put there in the first place, but yeah, it's for boys. That's all I know. Nichols Academy for boys, and then they have the side for white children, white kids, and then black kids, and I mean that's
Yeah.
segregated there.
Yeah.
So, uh, but yeah. I think I want to read the book because I feel like if I read the book and then watch the film, it will just make so much more sense to me. And hopefully,
Yeah.
to the clarity that I feel like I didn't get from the film will be filled in the book because I don't think it's something where I'm like, oh, it's up to your interpretation. It's like, no, this should be crystal clear with just something that it's so sensitive, like this type of topic, and just even the reform school in general, and how these boys were abused and like you said, beaten up and all this other stuff. Because you hear stuff, but you don't actually see
Hmm.
what's happening. Like they'll have you walk from Elwood's eyes and you hear like sounds of people getting beaten up, but they don't actually show it.
Hmm.
So, yeah. But I mean, clearly it's nominated, so it's popular and people are enjoying it, and definitely most of the critics. It's definitely artistically done. That's for
Yeah.
sure. 100%. I can see why critics were so um positive in terms of their reviews about it. I mean, it's definitely different. I mean, I'm going through some of the reviews now, just scrolling, and I know some people say it's bizarrely shot, but it's creatively done. You wouldn't have thought to do everything from this perspective. So, yeah. I mean, if you're interested in learning about, Jim Crow during the 50s and 60s in the South and about these reform schools for Black boys and what they had to go through, give it a watch.
Mhm. Cool. Yeah. It sounds like a nice, or not nice, but like a good
Not
slice
nice.
of history kind of story.
Right, exactly.
So, all right, cool. Well, I will close out the show with something less dramatic by far. Um, I I know I said last week I don't talk about video games a lot, but I will talk about a video game. I played for the last like week and a half or so the new Indiana Jones game that came out on the Xbox through Microsoft. Um, it's kind of cool. I have Microsoft, what do they call it? Game Pass Ultimate. So I get Microsoft has started releasing their games on a cloud gaming service, so you actually don't have to have an up-to-date console. You can just play them. You basically stream video games like you do with Netflix, but they're high quality current games. And so, because I have this, I could just play Indiana Jones, and a brand new release came out in December. And it's visually like I think there are better games visually because they're telling us a tighter story. Like if I look at something like The Last of Us Part Two or something like that, where you're really playing one character, everything is very structured, so they make everything beautiful because you really can only go certain ways. I think it's easier to make a game look better in that regard. So this one is like a step back from that. They definitely work really hard to make Indy look like Indy. It's Harrison Ford's face. What's really cool, and admittedly, before I say anything about it, I'm a known huge Troy Baker fan. I have back during the pandemic, he did a thing where he was really interactive with the fans, starting on Instagram, moved it to some more personal spaces, and it got to the point where I was actually in a few like group Zoom calls with literally with a handful of us fans and Troy Baker. And so like I've literally spoken to him and looked him in the computerized face. And he's, really cool guy. But he in this game does an amazing Indiana Jones. Like he sounds exactly like Harrison Ford. And it's really, really impressive. Now, as somebody that has grown up on Harrison Ford films, so Indiana Jones, Star Wars, things like that, and then is a big Troy Baker fan. So I've heard his normal speaking voice, heard him in a bunch of games, and all that. There are definitely moments where I hear more Troy Baker than I do Indiana Jones. Um, but I think it's interesting because I think Troy's voice is very close to Harrison Ford's in tone and all that. Where I think the challenge was to play Indiana Jones was to get um, Harrison Ford's mannerisms and kind of the way that he speaks, not necessarily the tone of his voice, but the way that he speaks. It's not as dramatic as somebody like Jeff Goldblum, who's very, very specific in the way that he talks. But there are certain ways that Harrison Ford talks that he had to master to get it right, and in most cases, he really, really did.
I caught someone breaking into the museum. He was tall. He took something. Scarred. Dark skin. He spoke some form of Latin.
Now, this game, if you look across the board in a lot of reviews, it's a 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10. It's got absolutely amazing reviews. But I did see some people that struggled in the beginning of the game, which is funny because I started playing it, and I think my son was there when I started playing it. Um, and I wasn't sure I was on board at first. Like it's weird because it much like the film you just talked about, it was played from a first person perspective, so you only see your hands, and then you see the game as it happens. Every now and then it'll zoom out, and you'll see things from um, from the third person. You'll see his Indy's face and back, and the cutscenes you always see Indiana Jones. But a lot of the game is played from your perspective. You see him through Indy's eyes, which works for a video game. A lot of video games are played that way to kind of make them more immersive. But it actually, the very first scene is the opening scene from Indiana Jones and uh, Raiders of the Lost Ark. So it's that opening scene. They even model the same characters the same way. You go through the temple. You have to run away from the boulder, and it works. It's really fun. And then once it kicks off, it is a very, very solid Indiana Jones story. Um, it's called Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. I didn't say the name of the game, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. Uh, and what it is, you're after you've gone on this adventure that we see in the beginning of Raiders of the Lost Ark. Um, Indy's back at his office. Somebody breaks in. He walks in. And it's this dude that's a giant. Guy's got to be like 8 feet tall. Black man in robes, played by the now late Tony Todd, who is a fantastic actor. He was Candyman. He's been around for decades, but done a lot of amazing work. Passed away just last year, so right after they probably finished making this game. But he comes across him. The dude is breaking in and stealing something, and then leaves. And when Indy encounters him in the first place, he's speaking a language that he's never heard before. It's not quite Latin; it's something else. And so the adventure begins. Like he now has to go find out why this guy broke in and stole this very specific thing, and it starts to lead him to this thing called the Great Circle. Now, I think the Great Circle actually does exist in kind of like world lore. The idea is that if you look at, ancient sites around the world, they are in a circle around the planet. They seem like they're not really scattered. So Machu Picchu, the pyramids, a few other places are along this basic circle that goes around the globe. And of course, because this is Indiana Jones and it takes place in the late 30s, early 40s, he's fighting Nazis. So you get to punch a lot of Nazis in the game. It's a lot of fun in that regard. And it takes you through three basic locations. You start in the Vatican, which is kind of neat because I've been to the Vatican. It's one of the only I've only traveled outside of the U.S. one time. It was to Italy. I got to tour the Vatican. And so like at one point you get to go into the Sistine Chapel. You can look up and see all that stuff. And so that's kind of fun. But you're starting to follow this puzzle, this mystery and figure things out. So you're in the Vatican, then you end up in the pyramids of Giza, and then you unlock kind of the magic of this device a little bit, which we've seen in other Indiana Jones films. Like they're not totally grounded. Like Raiders of the Lost Ark, the Ark is dangerous. It kills all the Nazis at the end of the movie. Temple of Doom, you're dealing with um, like cults and stuff. Dude literally pulls somebody's heart out of their chest, you know. Um, so the supernatural exists in the Indiana Jones. So this isn't a stretch. And what happens is when he finds these pieces of this kind of puzzle that you don't know what it's for, and you say a very specific word, it literally teleports him to another part of the world. And so there's a quick scene where you're in like the mountains of Tibet, and then it pops you over into I think it's Shanghai, China for a minute, which is another really brief scene before you end up in um, Siam, which I think is Thailand now. Um, and you just go through all the stuff and the big reveal at the end of the story. And I'll just be spoilerific here because I don't know that we're going to get a lot of gamers necessarily, but again, if you are a gamer, I definitely recommend this. It's a lot of fun. But we find out that what these pieces that you're trying to stop the Nazis from uncovering are pieces that go into the wheel of Noah's Ark. And so at the end of the game, you come and find the Ark hidden in a cave, and it's huge. Like it's this massive, massive boat. And the idea is that Noah was given these, I think it's 10 pieces. And the reason that he was able to do what he was able to do with the animals is he could essentially, teleport different parts of the world with the boat and grab the animals, right? They didn't necessarily come to him like they do in the Bible story. He went to them and got them and put them on the boat. And then this thing was broken up and thrown away. But the idea is because um, I think it's historically true that Hitler was very interested in the occult. And so, there's a lot of stories out there outside of Indiana Jones where there's people looking for supernatural objects. There's stories about how interested he was in UFOs and things like that. So, um, the idea is that if the Nazis can get a hold of this device, they would have the ultimate war machine because they could just pop into anywhere, attack absolutely unprepared places and kick ass and then just pop back out and dominate this war. So at the end, Indy has to fight and save the day and does all that. But it's really a very fun Indiana Jones story. And like I said, the beginning feels a little rough. Maybe it's because you're playing something that you've already seen. It's a little jarring that it's in the first person instead of third person, like a lot of adventure games are. Um, and like I said, the graphics aren't quite as amazing as some of the newer games out there. But once you really get into it, really start playing the story and going through the adventure, you'll find a lot of really solid actors, and they're not necessarily people that you know by name. Enrico Colantoni is one. He's been in a ton of stuff, but because it's a video game and they do voice capture and motion capture, he looks exactly like himself. So like as soon as he showed up, I heard him speak, I saw his face, and I was like, I know who that dude is. I've seen him in stuff. Like I said, Tony Todd. There's a Middle Eastern actress, Nakar Zadegan, who I recognize, but like I couldn't tell you what she was in, but I've certainly seen her before. Carlo Rota is another guy. He was in the Boondock Saints. He's been in a bunch of stuff, and probably a handful of other people. But it's just a really, it's a fun adventure game. You got puzzles, all the stuff that makes a good game. And once you kind of adjust to the graphics not being as amazing as some other stuff, there's a lot of places that are really genuinely beautiful. I don't think I feel like it's probably not as hardcore loyal to the locations as something like the Assassin's Creed games, where the original Assassin's Creed, like 3 games took place in Italy, which, like I said, is the only place that I've ever been outside of the country. but I remember walking around Italy in person and looking at buildings and being like, I've been in that building because I played Assassin's Creed. Like there's buildings that I've in the game either climbed on or seen or walked through or whatever. Um, and I don't know how accurate this one was. I know, like I said, there are places in the Vatican that I've been and seen, so I know that they're real. Um, but there was so much of Vatican City that you walk around that I don't know if it's factually detailed.
Is it geared towards, and just because I'm not an Indiana Jones expert, um, is it one of the films that it's focusing on, or no, it's just kind of
No,
combining a bunch of stuff
it's
from
an original
all their films?
story. Yeah, the only thing that it really pulls from the original film is the very beginning. So they,
Okay. The Boulder situation,
yeah, you have that
etc.
one.
Yeah.
They reference the girl from that one, but then they kind of
Okay.
ignore. I think the character's name is Marion.
Hmm.
They reference her, but then after that, it really they kind
They
of
take
reference a
creative
few characters.
license.
This 100% could be an Indiana Jones story
Film.
that took place in his timeline. So there's no
Mm,
like the thing about this is it gives you the opportunity if they want to make another game
hmm
to still tell Indiana Jones stories in his timeline because you have um you I guess the actual timeline order is that Temple of Doom takes place before Raiders of the Lost Ark, even though it's the second film. Just
hmm
confusing. You have those, and then you jump ahead a few years because they waited a long time to make it, and then they did The Last Crusade, which was Indiana Jones and Sean Connery,
hmm
and then they waited a long time, and then they made the Crystal Skull, which was the one with Shia LaBeouf, where Shia LaBeouf plays his son.
hmm
And at that point, you have a much older Indy
Right.
because Harrison Ford was much older. And then they did Dial of Destiny just last year, the year before, which was okay. It was better than Crystal Skull, but it wasn't great. But it was kind of the final send off for Indiana Jones as
Right.
far as his timeline goes. But in that timeline, you're spanning a couple of decades. If you make video games, you can fill in the gaps as long as you make the character feel like Indiana Jones, which they did an
Right.
absolutely amazing job here. So there's the way they time it out. There's no reason to believe that this isn't the Indiana Jones that we know. And this
hmm
is just an adventure he went on that we didn't hear about until now. So it really does work perfectly in that regard. And like I said, I'll try and throw in a voice clip or two to kind of show kind of how on the nose Troy really was as playing Indiana Jones because he did a great job.
Yeah? You ain't no nun, sweetheart. Well, I might not be a priest, but I'm pretty certain stealing is a straight no-hitter with the Ten Commandments. Not entirely certain what the rules are for a reporter.
There was
hmm
also at the Video Game Awards last year, Harrison Ford actually came out and they talked about it, and he was joking and he said, "If I had known that this guy was going to do such a good job as me in the game, I would have just done it myself and taken the paycheck." Like, and but what was
That's
really
funny.
cool is Troy Baker, I don't think up until that point had actually met Harrison Ford. So he met him at the Game Awards
Hmm
and he said, backstage just how complimentary and kind and nice Harrison Ford was, which is kind of great because Harrison Ford's kind of known at this point in his life for being a crotchety old man. Like he's a grumpy dude.
Oh,
But he was like really complimentary and really, really nice to him backstage. So
that's great.
yeah. So it's cool to see him be able to hand off his legacy in a way that it's done respectfully. Like it's not a caricature of Indiana Jones. It's not somebody kind of just trying to do it, but not really. I mean, he really, in most of the game, like I said, I think it's more noticeable to me because I've heard Troy Baker just be Troy Baker. He did he had a YouTube channel that he did for a long time with Nolan North, who's another big video game actor. I've just heard him speak in his normal voice a lot, and I definitely
Hmm
noticed when it slipped into that a little bit. But I mean, overall, it's an incredible job. It's just a lot of fun, and if you are an Xbox player and you have Xbox, Game Pass Ultimate. I think that allows you to play it on the PC or the Xbox. Um, and
Hmm.
yeah, you can basically play it for, no extra money because you're already paying a monthly fee. So
Hmm.
it's 100% worth it. It's a ton of fun. And like I said, it really feels like a true Indiana Jones story once it really gets going. Like you're really going through all of
Hmm.
the things that he goes through with the characters that he meets, and for the most part, they're all new characters.
Right.
There's some references to characters from the other movies, which I think is fun, and it makes it feel
Hmm.
like it's that same world, but it's not. Um, you're not being beat over the head with you should have watched the movies before you played the game, or you should have watched them recently, right? Like, uh,
Hmm.
you should probably watch an Indiana Jones movie first so you know the character. But I feel like even if you didn't, this would be a really fun game.
Hmm.
He's just um, really solid, really well fleshed out, and just a lot of fun to play. So
Nice.
yeah, I
Looking
definitely
forward to it.
recommend it, and would if you're a gamer, go give it a shot. The only downside is it's at least at this point not a multi-console game, so you have to play Xbox or PC to play it right now. So,
Sure.
but yeah, go play it, and that's all I've got. I don't know. Do you have anything else?
Not not for today, this
All right.
evening, now morning.
Yeah, yeah. I know you are out next week, right?
I am out next week. Yes.
I think Andrew's back next week. There's a chance we'll actually have an actual interview for somebody
Cool.
next week again, which would be great. It may not be next week, it may be the following week. So we'll see about that this week. I think a few things come out. I think Severance comes back this week. If you have Apple TV Plus, you should 100% go watch the first season of Severance. Season 2 comes back. I feel like there was something else that I was really excited about that comes back this week. Also on the 15th, Love Island All Stars premieres in the US. If by some chance you're watching us in the UK, it starts on the 13th in the UK. I'm a big dumbass for Love Island. I don't know why. It's my only reality TV show, but I love it. Um, so that'll be fun. I really think there was one more thing that I was super pumped about that was coming this week, but I cannot remember what it is. But yeah, there's some good stuff coming. So if we don't do an interview next week, I'll definitely have stuff to talk about at least, and so it should be a solid show. So if you got nothing else, then with that, I will
That's it.
say thank you to everybody for watching. Thank you for listening. Have a great week, and we will see you next time.